Welcome back to another video. Today we are taking a look at this. It's the Olympus 100-400mm f5 to f6.3 zoom lens. Now this is an awesome telephoto lens. Of course, it's on a micro four thirds system, so really as a 35mm equivalent, so full frame equivalent, we're talking about a 200 to 800mm zoom lens that's this big. And I've been shooting everything with it handheld. I've not even put it on a tripod once, because that's the beauty about these micro four thirds lenses. And especially when you get into the super telephoto kind of zoom lenses like this, it's just such a joy to be able to use what is essentially 800mm handheld without any issues at all. I've been walking around. I actually walked quite a considerable distance to get some of the photos of checking out for wildlife, checking out for kind of landscape and things like that. But this would be perfect for all kinds of things. In fact, let's just talk about that zoom range for a second. 200 to 800mm equivalent. It works with the 1.4x converter and the 2x converter. Now I tried it with the 2x converter, and that means that I was shooting 1600mm handheld, just with no issue. Now, like I said before, this would be perfect for stuff like wildlife, for sports, but with that kind of zoom range, you could definitely use this for things like landscape, getting a different kind of look on the landscape, you know, getting the compression of having a longer focal length and actually getting a very different look to your landscape, portraits. There's all kinds of things that you can use this for. It's an incredibly versatile zoom range. 200 is of course pretty tight, but it's not that tight. There's a lot you can do with 200mm, and then you can just punch in and punch in again. If you're using something like the 2x converter, punch all the way into what is the equivalent of 1600mm. It lets you get super close to things. Now, as I said, I've been using this handheld, walking around. Part of that is because it's just really not that heavy. I've been using it with the EM1 Mark III, which has been a lovely experience, but it means that the whole system is easy to hold in one hand while I'm walking along, and then of course with two hands while I'm shooting. That's no issue at all. But part of the reason that it's so easy to shoot handheld is actually the image stabilization in the lens. Now this has got image stabilization in the lens, which then can work with the IS in the body as well to give you really, really good stabilization for shooting handheld. It means that you're not having to use some crazy shutter speed just to make sure you're not getting that camera shake. In fact, I was regularly using something like 1/400th of a second, even when I would normally have to use something closer to 1/800th or 1/1000th of a second, just to make sure that I wasn't getting that shake. It's got a minimum focusing distance of 1.3 meters, and that's through the whole zoom range, even with the converters as well, which means that you can get really close to your subject and get some incredible detail in your images. Now, speaking of images, let's talk about the image quality that you're gonna get from this lens. I was really, really happy with the kind of stuff that I was able to get from this lens. The sharpness, the contrast, the colors look fantastic. And in particular, something I noticed when I got back to the computer and started editing, there's really no issue with vignetting really at all, which is really quite impressive, especially out at kind of what is the equivalent of 800mm, and then with a 2x converter 1600mm. The fact that there's not really any vignetting at all is amazing. It really helps when it comes to editing and the kind of images that you want to produce. Now, the sharpness and the kind of clarity just out of camera using this lens was so nice. The detail in the birds and all the things I was taking photos of, and squirrel and stuff like that, was fantastic. You see all the little hairs and everything. Just the detail and the sharpness was really, really something else. Now, since we're talking about photos of birds and squirrels and things like that, it's worth talking about the autofocus. Now, like I said, I was using the EM1 Mark III, which also has fantastic autofocus. But with this lens, I was never getting any hunting. I wouldn't get that hunting back and forth. I was using the tracking autofocus, and that was great. Birds in flight, no issue. Squirrels running around on trees, absolutely no issue. I wasn't getting loads of difficulties or anything like that. It would just snap on, track it around the frame. As long as I physically kept up with the subject, it was no issue. And that was the case right through the zoom range, which I thought was really, really good. It was very, very easy to rely on the autofocus while I was using this lens. Now, it sits really well on the front of something like the EM1 Mark III. It balances nicely, and with a two-hand grip, it's really easy to shoot handheld. Of course, you could mount it on a tripod if you want to, but I found it perfectly easy to shoot handheld. It is an extending zoom lens, which makes sense. I mean, these lenses are so small for what they are. I mean, 100 to 400 essentially 200 to 800. This is tiny for what you would expect for that kind of zoom range. So it makes sense that it extends, but it feels nice. The actual zoom ring there does feel good. It's got a little bit of a weight to it, which is quite nice. And I never had an issue with holding it like this with one hand, where the actual extension would come out by itself. It's a pretty sleek design on the lens as well. You've just got these controls here. So you've got the actual focusing distance, the AF, MF control, and of course the image stabilization. And then you've just got a lock to actually lock that to stop it from zooming if you want to as well. It's also worth mentioning as well, this is weather sealed to IPX1 standards. So that's gonna be useful for any wildlife photographers who wanna go out and take it out in kind of different conditions, you know, rather than just a nice sunny day. That's a useful thing to have. Ultimately though, I am always just so impressed with lenses like this. Now the Micro Four Thirds system, I know it's small, I know that it's nice and easy to carry around, it's lightweight, but I always kind of forget just how easy it makes everything. You know, I often shoot full frame or APS-C as well, but I forget Micro Four Thirds is so easy to just walk around with and take photos, especially with something like this. I love the Super Telephoto lenses on a Micro Four Thirds system, and this is no different. And certainly, with terms of image quality, this is a lovely, lovely lens. So I think this is gonna make a lot of people very, very happy, and it gives a really nice option for heading out to do wildlife photography or sports or anything like that. Now, if you have any questions about the lens at all, pop it down in the comments below. We'll get back to you ASAP. Of course, if you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe. As we always tell you every single video, I will of course see you in the next video. And as always, thanks for watching.